Welcome to Destress Your Business, the podcast where we show you how to get incredible results in your business without constant stress. I'm Alexis Kingsbury, a serial entrepreneur and founder at AirManual. Now, my special guest today is Adi Klevit, a seasoned expert in transforming businesses through effective systemization. She's the host of the podcast Systems Simplified and is founder of the Business Success Consulting Group. Now, Adi has a track record of helping fast-growing businesses to streamline their operations, enhance their employee training and retention, and increase their profitability. And her work is pivotal for those who are preparing to scale or sell their business, ensuring they're not just surviving, but thriving in today's competitive market. So in this episode, we're going to uncover the hidden challenges that businesses face without the proper systems. We'll explore the transformational power of having efficient processes, and we'll learn how to begin the journey of systemization for sustained growth and success. Adi, can you share an overview of what do we mean by systemization, and what does that mean in the context of a growing business?
Sure. So systems, it's something that you're going to do repetitively. It's a way of doing something repetitively over and over, but to get the same results, right? So that is a system. Now, within the system, of course, you can have variables of how you do it, but you basically, if you systematize something, you have a way of doing something in a controlled way to get the same results. So for instance, you have your sales team, or you're growing your business and you want to hire now a sales team or an estimator, etc. If you want to systematize the way you sell, you basically will have all the key components in place in terms of qualifying leads, in terms of, receiving the leads, lead intake, qualifying the leads, basically gathering the information, right? The data analysis, so the need assessment, and then writing the proposal or the estimate and presenting the estimate, and then the follow-up. So that will be a system because you are following specific steps in order to achieve an end result. Now, it's not like you're going to follow out the script every single time, right? You're going to have the freedom of talking to the person in front of you, because if you have somebody who is more concerned about different things, you're going to talk to them about those things, and somebody that say, yeah, let's go. So you sign them up. So you have the way of doing it, but you're following a system.
Sure. I know you know that I'm a geek for systems as well, and the concept of having repeatable systems, like having that confidence that you can have those systems in your business, I think is a popular one. It's one that I think most people and business owners, business leaders would appreciate, that benefit that you'd have. But to really bring that to life, what are some of the most common challenges that you see in fast-growing businesses that lack those systems that provide that consistency?
In businesses that are growing fast and changing, the challenge is, how do I capture the changing processes? Because maybe it's not something as concrete or as solid as a business and doesn't have a lot of changes. So one of the challenges is, how do I keep up with the changes and make sure that I communicate the changes? So those are, and another challenge is how to make sure that if you do have those processes in place, how do we make sure that they're actually followed by all? Like, how do we not slip back to old habits? And how do you overcome but that's the way it's always been done kind of syndrome, right?
Yeah, and I think that a lot of those resonate with me as ones that we've seen perhaps with our clients on the AirManual side, or that I've had in my own businesses over the years. If I was to dive in perhaps to one of those areas, which is people doing things differently. One of the first examples you gave of the problem that you see when you don't have that systemization is that everyone works out their own different way of doing things. And actually, in some businesses, I almost see that encouraged, and an encouragement of, we want to hire smart people and we want them to have autonomy, and we don't want to spoon feed them too much or make them feel too scripted. People aren't robots. We want them to use their own genius. What's the problem with that?
Absolutely. And I'm going to take an example of a creative agency, a marketing agency, because that's where I hear it the most, right? I mean, we don't want to squash creativity. We want to make sure that people can have their own way, which is nothing wrong with it, but it's the balance. It's all about the balance between those two. So an example of a marketing agency that we were working with. So if they didn't have any systems, what they were running into, they were growing. I mean, it was working fine. It worked fine when you had an owner is kind of like a solopreneur, or maybe somebody assisting them. But then when they start growing and getting more and more clients, what was broken was really the intake of the clients. Because let's say you sell a website, you sign up a client. I mean, you have to deliver. I'd cancel on you, or they're going to get upset, or they're not going to be raving fans, and you want raving fans to your brand, right? So what we did is we created a system on how to intake a client. So a client comes on, first of all, the system of presenting the proposal and signing the proposal, and really for them to understand what is happening. So that way they were able to hire salespeople. So that's one thing. But then when it got handed off from sales to operations to the fulfillment, we systematized that, because what can happen is, oh, great, I sold something, but then forgot to commit fulfillment, and then the client doesn't hear anything. And that's a very touchy point here, because that's where the buyer remorse can happen. That's where the clients go, well, I paid all this money, the salesperson was great, but now nobody's calling me. And it's not because you just want to take the money and not call, but if you don't have a system of doing it and you just let the salesperson call whenever, it's not going to happen. So we implemented that handoff, and we really smoothed it out. So we created a system for the onboarding. So when a client joins, immediately get a welcome email with getting the next steps. That's the system, right? You don't have to reinvent the email every single time. You can use a template. And you can, of course, and we encourage that. Don't just use a template so it looks templated, but use the template and add a few sentences that makes it personalized to the clients. So let's say if the salesperson writes the email, so instead of sitting there for 20 minutes and every single time writing a new email, use the template and then add, it was great meeting with you. I love the company. I love what you do. And yes, I know it's very important to you, blah, blah, blah. And we'll make sure that happens. Boom. Client feels like he's communicating to me, but it also has all the important information that you don't have to retype, right? So that's a system. You send it to the client, then, the follow-up. So there is a system of how fast can we get all the assets, because when you create a website, you have to get information from the client, and sometimes it takes time. So you need to have a system for the follow-up, so we don't extend it unnecessarily. Then we have to have a system for the milestones throughout the project. We don't have a system necessarily on the color choosing or the creativity. You could have best advice, so you don't have to reinvent the wheel. And we actually did that because we work with an architecture firm and a design firm that, the best advice was great because people can just go there. And instead of starting from zero, they can start up here and then take it all to the next level. So the example of a system, and the result of it is that marketing agency just grew and grew and grew because they were able to train, they were able to deliver better service to the clients, and clients felt it. And, and I interviewed on my podcast many successful agency owners, and the common denominator is that all of them had very well documented processes and procedures, while in between giving the freedom of creativity to their staff.
Yeah, I love that, because I think that's one of the common objections that we hear when it's, okay, yes, I get that many businesses want to systemize, but I wouldn't want to systemize mine because I don't want to take out the creativity, the magic, the freedom, whatever. And often, I often say it's like, I think people make the mistake of thinking that structure results in reduced creativity, whereas actually it's like, no, structure reduces chaos. And actually, if you want to be creative, chaos makes that very difficult, right? Like, if you want to be creative and get your thinking going, where do people go? They go on retreats and spa breaks and all these sorts of things where you don't have chaos. It's calm and things work in a particular way. So I really like that as an example. I think also I really like that you illustrate how it's not just about fixing some problems like inconsistent customer experiences, so you've got a few unhappy customers and so on. Actually, it fundamentally has the ability to, when you have the systems in place, to support scaling, as you said, with the marketing agency, it's then able to grow really fast and so on. In fact, really interesting to see, like, what did it take? Like, because I think that's one of the concerns that people have around systemization is, it'll take a long time before I can get these sorts of benefits. What's been your experience of how much time or effort needs to go in before you start getting results, and then what's the scale and potential of those results?
Immediate results, like within a month, they can see the results because they were, they're all in, and they had the mindset of, we're going to use it. And there will be companies that, you need to work through, create, talk to individuals, interview them, convince them that it will be good for them to do it. So it really depends on where the company is at. But the thing that I like to see is immediate return on investment. And the way that we do it, and that's what I also recommend to, not just like the people that we work with, but just in general, how to approach a project like this, is to actually make sure that you start with that area that will give you the big return on investment. And what do I mean by that? Is you look at your company, right? And then you go, okay, what area of the company, if I had well documented processes and procedures, will get me the biggest return on investment? And you have to figure out what the return on investment is for you. Like, for instance, I had a client that said, I'm working 60 hours a week. I have small kids. I don't see them. My return on investment will be to be able to have dinner with my family 3 times a week. I'd be like, okay, so how can we do that? What hat do you have to shed and give to somebody else and train them in order for you to work, say, 5 less hours a week so you can actually have that dinner, right? Let's start in incremental steps. We're not just like working out. It's not like we're going to take somebody who is 300 pounds. We're going to say, yeah, we're going to just like right now get you buff and, running a marathon. It doesn't work. And then people get discouraged. So it's like, let's take that step that will actually show you results. So I had another client that she said, well, what I would like to do is to actually leave on Tuesday at 4 p.m. and pick up my kid from kindergarten and go to the park.
I really like that. I love the fact that even when we're talking about what's the return investment, it's not just about the business scaling faster, making more money. In some cases, it's time with family members and so on. One of the other things that I know that you've helped clients with is actually helping them get ready for sale. So could you talk a bit about how systemization plays a role in increasing the value of a business for sale and making that process possible and easier? And perhaps any examples that you've had of like what tangible impact having that systemization in place has had?
Absolutely. So, I helped several businesses. We've helped, myself and my team, we've helped several businesses prepare for sale by systematizing. And why? It's because it gives so much confidence to the buyer that when they're investing in the business, they can do something with it. Because I'll give you an example of a project that we have done on the opposite side, when we got hired by the buyer, like the person that actually bought the business. And he bought a business that was going along for about 30 years. It had a lot of potential. That's why he bought the business. And there was an employee there that, basically she worked there probably from the beginning. And she had all the knowledge in her head. So he realized that if they don't document what she knows, if she goes, he basically invested in nothing because he will have to figure it all out, and there was no way he would be able to, and he would lose all of his investment. So they brought us in to document, and that's what we did. We extracted the information, we created processes, and everything was really well documented, and they were able to follow it. And then eventually, when the employee retired, they were able to continue with the business. It's business continuity. Now, it's kind of like selling a house. So in this example, you sell a house, it's kind of like a fixer upper. You don't get a lot of, you don't charge a lot, but you go, okay, buy it as is because I want to get rid of the house, right? And then you buy the house and you invest all the money in the renovation. But the problem there is that, not a lot of buyers will be willing to do that, because what if you start ripping out the floors and, and the cabinets and all that, and you find mold or dry rot or who knows what, right? So you might as well just buy something that is under warranty, that the construction was already done, the problems got handled. But on the other hand, on the flip side, if you're selling a house, that if you're going to invest in certain things, you're going to get a return on your investment, because selling a house that the kitchen is fully renovated and somebody walks in and go like, wow. So maybe it costs you $30,000 to renovate the kitchen, but you got another $100,000 in the sale price because it's what it gives you the confidence. It gives you it's ready to move in. It's different. So that it's the same concept. I mean, I'm just throwing numbers, in terms of the remodeling, but it's the same concept. I mean, I had a client that had a painting company, and he met with a prospective buyer, and I was there with him, and I saw the eyes of the prospective buyer. I was like, wow, okay. You could see that they were like, I've never seen anything like that. They didn't say that, but that was the reaction, right? Or another company that just sold, a retail company. We documented everything, their marketing. We documented their campaigns. We documented how to train employees. I mean, it was huge. And then they got definitely, the price that they sold the company for definitely exponentially grew because of the well documented processes and procedures. Because it's, like, why do people buy franchises? They buy franchise. I mean, there are different reasons, but one of the main reasons, and we work with several franchisors, right, to create the manuals, is that because it's a plug and play. You just you pay the money. Yeah, you pay money for it. You don't start a business from scratch, but you are expecting a manual. You're expecting a marketing plan. You're expecting okay, you know how to do those things. It's been successful. And what you need to do, you can concentrate on being the operator, or, obviously you need to run the business, but let's say, for instance, if you are buying a carpet cleaning franchise because you worked somewhere else as a carpet cleaner, or you know how to clean carpets, okay. Or, installing blinds, you know how to do that, you know how to sell, but, the marketing part, the hiring the employees, how to keep the books, all of that, if you have it all well documented, that's why you're buying the franchise. So it's the same concept. You're basically, how can you sell a business without even getting transferring the knowledge? And, another key thing is that I interview many entrepreneurs that sold the business. And, you probably can run a business. Sometimes you are tied into a contract to actually be now a consultant in your own business for several years sometimes. Why is that? It's because they don't want to lose the knowledge, right? They tie you in there and you maybe not get the entire sell price because, they want to make sure, the new owners want to make sure that they're actually investing in something that will continue. Now, imagine if you had everything documented and it's a great manual, that contract might go from 2 years to maybe 3 to 6 months because it's all documented. You, of course, want to make sure it's being passed correctly. So, yeah, it's not going to eliminate that completely, but it will be, if you've been asked questions, well, go and look at the manual. Go look at the manual. Eventually, they will say, oh, go look at the manual. It's all here. We don't need you anymore. We don't need you to pay you this big salary. Okay, you go. And then you have the freedom from your business.
Yeah, I love that. And I think for a lot of people who are either considering selling their business or just want it to be in a good shape if they need or want to exit in future, or someone who's buying it, I think the attractiveness of essentially reducing transition risk, and therefore for the buyer reducing the risk that the business doesn't continue to throw out decent cash flow, or for the seller reducing the risk that they're going to need some kind of earn out or need to spend a long time in the business after sale, which from people I know that have sold businesses can be incredibly painful and emotionally draining to have to spend time around a business that you've emotionally exited from and perhaps aren't happy with how the new owners might run it. Right. And so, yeah, removing those sorts of things is incredibly attractive. We've talked about how systemizing can have a huge impact on a business's ability to scale. We've talked about how for the individual, for the business owner, for the leader, it can help free them from the business and help it give them time with their family and so on. It can help them reduce the reliance of the business on them when it comes to a sale or an exit, so that they're not having to be tied to it. And it has benefit for someone who's buying a business and wants to make sure that it's going to continue in future. One of the challenges that I often see is this concern around how can we get things captured in a way that is quick, because, for example, often in these scenarios, particularly if you're trying to capture what an employee is doing perhaps before they leave an organization, you need to do it quickly, but also you don't want to capture a load of mess that's really difficult for other people to then pick up and run with. How have you approached that?
That's a great question. One of the things that we always use is a process documentation platform. We got to. And your platform AirManuals is amazing. I love the interface. I love how it's organized. But why? Why not to just document it on SharePoint or Google Drive or a Word document? Well, first of all, you need the version control. That's super important. You have to make sure that you actually, not everybody can access it. And yes, you can have viewers and editors, etc., but it's not as simple. You need to organize it in such a way where you can upload videos and screenshots very easily. You have to make sure that it's uniform, that everything looks the same, because how many times have I looked at companies and they say, yeah, we have documentation, and then you open a Word document with a few words on it, right? When you use a process documentation platform, it does the editing. I mean, it does basically the structure for you. So all you need to do is to enter the text and enter the screenshots and enter the videos. It's very easy to monitor where it's at, so you have basically your manual, but it's more than that, because in AirManuals, you are able to actually manage the whole project. Basically, these are the core processes I need to schedule, to document. Here's who's responsible for the documentation. This is what percentage was done, right? And then you can really find out and see where are you at on the documentation. But not only that, you can then send it to everyone through the system, and you also can create regular reviews, which are so important. So those platforms, like AirManuals, is like there for a reason. It's because it takes the guess out of like, where's my document? Where am I saving it to? Everyone has access, and this is the manual. This is the mind of the company. This is the repository of everything that the company, all the knowledge of the company. The knowledge of the company is so valuable. It's really, if you look at the asset of what the company is, it's not the machines and the vehicles and the fleet and whatnot. That's fine. It definitely is, but it has a price. It can be replaced, right? But the knowledge, which goes together with the human capital, are really the assets of the company. So in order to retain that human capital and also retain the knowledge, you have to invest in a system that will actually capture it, and it will be easy to use. In order for the documentation, for the processes to be used, you have to have also a system that the people will feel excited about logging in, and they will feel like when they look at it, they smile. They don't just go, oh, I don't want to go in there, right? Or it's like boring, it's not exciting, whatever it is, you have to make sure that it's actually something that is easy to use, easy to access, and that the employees want to use.
Yeah, I love that. I think that you're so right a bit, about how it's organized, how it's designed, how it looks, how it feels, actually makes a surprising amount of difference to the extent to which your team are actually going to use the documentation and follow it and keep it up to date. We've both definitely experienced that those moments in our careers where we've ended up taking that moment and go, oh, I've spent so much time just moving the borders in this table in a Word document to try and make this look okay. And now I've realized it looks different to the 10 other documents.
No.
That's not where you want to be spending your time creating those things. Like having that structure and making it easy to get that captured and used is so important. And I like that. I think for a lot of people, they'll be thinking, okay, I want to sort out systemization. It feels like quite a big thing, though. It can feel, particularly for someone who doesn't feel like they're a systems geek and love processes, perhaps even see it as boring, heaven forbid. But what would be your advice on where they should start?
They should make a decision to start. They should really convince themselves. I would really start by making a list of the why. Why is it so important for you to document your processes and procedures? And it can't be because somebody told you. It can be because you heard a podcast and you go, okay, well, now I'm supposed to. It's not going to carry you through. It's just think about you of exercising. You can ask me where would it be? Where would be the decision? Like, what would be the first step in working out? And staying fit. Well, it's really making the decision that that's what you're going to do and starting. It's kind of like the mornings that I wake up and I just don't. I'm not going to work out today. I work out almost every day, right? But there will be those mornings that I'm just like, oh, no, get on the bike. Come on, let's do it. And then you start doing it, and then you do more and you do more, and then you just get into it. So you have to start, but you have to make a decision. and you have to get buy-in from your group. So if you are, you have your employees, there will be processes are not needed. It will, just like when we started a podcast, it will tie us down. It's not creative enough, whatever they're saying, or we have to produce, we don't have time for processes. You have to get the buy-in, and you have to figure out why do you want to engage on this process, on this project of documenting processes. And I think if you have that, then you go into the area that will give you the biggest return on investment.
Yeah, I think that's absolutely key. And I think as you say, focusing on what's the why behind it, like what do you want from it? It reminds me of another person that we interviewed on the podcast a little while ago, Kirk Miller, where we were talking, his whole thing was around fitness and focusing on actually what's the positive outcomes that you're looking for, rather than focusing on all the negative things that you associate with exercise and so on. And I think, as you say, getting clear on what does it look like for you as a business owner? How do you want to show up as a business owner? What do you want it to feel like for your team, for you, for your family?
Right. Alexis, think about it, like you did it in your own business. What is it that you wanted to achieve?
Yeah, for me, it's been at various stages. Like one of the big stages was extracting myself out of sales so that I could grow, right? I knew that I couldn't scale any further if I was always going to rely on my own time to be able to have the sales. But also one of the biggest things for me was being able to spend time with my family. And I remember systemizing support particularly was important for us, customer support, because if myself and Paddy, my co-founder, like if we were the ones that always have to do support, it meant that holidays and weekends and evenings and so on would get eaten when issues occurred. And so I think, as you say, it's like thinking about what's causing you pain, what's taking you away from your ideal life, and then working backwards from that to say, okay, this is the thing I need to systemize. And I think that probably illustrates that it's not even the case that once you've identified that, you have to systemize the whole business. Like you start getting results when you start documenting an individual process or task. And I think that can scare really quickly. Cool. Well, unfortunately, we've come up for time, but it's been so good talking to Adi. Your podcast, Systems Simplified, is absolutely awesome for people wanting to learn more about this. And we've referenced some of the great interviews that you've done on there. And I'd recommend people connect with you on social media. And so I'll make sure that there's links in the show notes. And also, if people would like to find out about Adi's business, you can find it at www.biz, that's B-I-Z, successcg.com. Again, link in the show notes. Is there any other way in which people should connect with you, follow you, etc., Adi?
LinkedIn is great, as you said, in social media. So just look me up in LinkedIn. It's Adi Klevit. And, I'll be happy to talk to you. You can always book a free process mapping session. The link is in LinkedIn and also on our website.
Fantastic. Love it. Brilliant. Well, thank you so much, Dee. And for anyone listening, if you found today's content valuable, and I'm sure that you did, please just take a minute, hit the like button, subscribe, leave a review. Just one of those as a minimum. Throw us a bone. We really appreciate it. This will help the episode get more visibility. It helps more people. So please do that. But otherwise, thanks so much for tuning in. And thank you, Adi, for joining me and sharing such great insight. But otherwise, for everyone else, until next time, have fun.